We have to recognize that this redistricting was done in response to the Supreme Court decision to weaken the Civil Rights Law, the Voting Rights Act, which was put in place to protect African Americans' right to have representation. And right now, this is so awful what's happening in our country with all this gerrymandering on both sides. It's awful. It's terrible for our country because you create these safe Republican seats, these safe Democratic seats, and the general election doesn't matter because you're going to win anyway. You only have to worry about the primary, and everybody just panders to their base to win the primary, and that's dividing our country further. And so it's very much race involved. I can't stand the fact that you're splitting up Memphis into 3 different congressional districts. That's awful that you're cutting up communities like that. And that's happening in places throughout our country right now, and it's bad for America.
Are you opposed to the gerrymandering efforts in New York as
well? I'm opposed to all gerrymandering.
Seats?
I've always been opposed to gerrymandering. It's bad for the country to set up these seats like this. We should have independent redistricting. We should allow independents to vote. We should have open primaries. But this is being done in response to what took place in Texas. And there's going to continue to be this tit for tat. They'll do this, then we'll do that, then they'll do this, then we'll do that. And it's bad for America. And this is making it worse.
I think we also have to understand that Black Americans have faced barricade after barricade after barricade in front of them forever for voting. So to take a majority Black district like Memphis and split it up, pull it into 3 separate sections so it goes into rural Tennessee, if you aren't familiar with the state, they're taking a Black district and stretching it out so that the white voters overtake the Black voters in those 3 districts. That's deliberately trying to make one party have no representation. It is an abuse of power. We should say that. This is not just a Black voter problem, because if anyone thinks their vote should count, this is a problem. This is starting with Black voters, but it'll carry on to all of us. The bottom line is Trump and the MAGA Republicans are losing. People are not happy with how they are running the country. So they are desperate to control the outcome of elections by stripping away their opponents' power piece by piece, particularly in the South, where they have the most control. We need a national ban on gerrymandering. It doesn't matter what party we have. Any law that limits who can vote, how they can vote, if their vote is counted, is wrong. We need fair, non-partisan maps. Take a grid to the entire country if you have to. We shouldn't have what happened in Texas, in Florida, in Oklahoma, and yes, in California and Virginia. That should not be happening. It should be fair, and if you are someone that believes that your vote should count, you should be angry. You do not have to be a Black American for this to happen, but you should be angry on behalf of Black Americans that it's happening to them again.
Let me play an exchange that a Democratic state lawmaker had with a Republican about how they managed to carve up the Black voters in the state in the way that they did.
So is that correct that the census data was the sole basis for drawing these lines from 2020?
Speaker Zachary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, it's my understanding the census was used to draft the map you have in front of you.
Chairman Clement.
Based on the population.
Okay, well, that's pretty interesting because census data doesn't include any partisan scores or partisan data. And your whole entire argument this entire week has been that this is about politics and partisanship. So if you solely relied on census data, I'm confused about how you knew partisan scores when drawing this map, if that wasn't even considered.
Speaker Zachary.
Thank you. Did you have a question?
He doesn't answer the question because it is a good question. Are they using just census data, or are they using race as a proxy for partisanship? And is that really, I mean, is that a smokescreen for carving up Black voters?
I mean, you use proxies for partisanship based on socioeconomic factors, on income, on
race.
Geography, on zip code.
On race?
I've frankly have never seen that in any analyses that I've seen, though prior to the Cali decision, when there were redistricting efforts, they would look at that factor. They would look at race to figure out whether or not they're in compliance of Section 2 of the VRA. Now we're in a different world where we're not cabineting specific districts. Just like to state for the record, this is the guy who is currently representing that area.
So what? I mean,
we had these independent redistricting commissions.
What's the point of pointing out that Steve Cohen as well?
My point, we have the same issue in Michigan where we had We have an independent redistricting commission, right? It's independent. There's always going to be politics in gerrymandering, regardless of how you try to dress it up with nonpartisan commissions. You can try to control for the partisanship, but you're never going to eliminate that element. But I will say that, but the rich irony is that in both California and Virginia, they had independent redistricting commissions. They wanted to reform it, and then they cast off the shackles of the principles as soon as it was politically convenient.
Well, they asked the voters.
Yeah.
Unlike any of the other states that did not ask the voters.
Actually deceived the voters, depending on
I'm
how
actually
the
glad.
system
Let's show the picture again. I'm glad that you brought up that he's a white representative that represents black districts, because guess what? They had the opportunity to choose. This is about taking away black Americans' opportunity to choose who they want to represent them. So whether that is white Representative Cohen, if that is Representative Pearson, who's black, who's running for that same district, who is, running against Cohen, the bottom line is it was set up, the Article 2 of the Voting Rights Act was set up to allow my community to have the choice, because so many choices have been taken away from us. And so when you take that away,
more elements in Article 2.
when you take, but that's the element we're going to focus on tonight.
Michigan. Let's look at
And so-
Michigan's congressional delegation.
Yeah.
I mean, there were a number of VRA seats that were drawn to make sure they had the appropriate amount of African American voters, which, the assumption there is on the partisanship. Not a single one of them is represented by an African American
let's go back,
representative.
and
only representative in Congress.
I have a problem with that.
You have to admit, it is a little ironic that the
that's-
woman now who is likely going to win the 9th district in Tennessee is a black Republican woman as a result of this redistricting effort. It's likely going to be a black Republican woman who beats that old white man.
I just wanted to make the basic point that in the presidential election, Trump got 65%, Kamala Harris got 35%. So it's easy to assume that Tennessee is 35% Democratic. Of the current 9 seats, 1 seat is Democratic. Of 35%, it would be 3 seats would be Democratic. Right now it's 1. Under this new redistricting, it'll be 9 Republican, 0 Democratic. That's just not right. And this is happening all over our country, and it's destroying our country.
Yeah, I mean, Republicans were just complaining about this very thing in Virginia a couple weeks ago. And so now this is an even more extreme example of how, putting aside race for a second, just if you're a Democrat in the state, you have no shot of having a representative that has your interests in mind in Washington at this point.
Which is similar to many places in the Northeast. And I will say, I think the Tennessee move is in direct retaliation. And I'll say retaliation because Hakeem Jeffrey said it was maximum warfare. That's what he said after the Virginia redistricting
He was responding
case.
to Trump
who did it
redistricting
first.
Texas.
Right.
He didn't,
Which was in
he didn't
response
say that.
to New
Why don't we
York,
just
which was
all
in
agree?
response
Why
to
don't the Republicans and the Democrats?
Let's
Why don't we
not
all
do it.
agree? We're all different
True.
viewpoints.
It's
Why don't we all
always,
agree this is wrong?
started, yeah.
Gerrymandering is wrong. Safe seats is hurting our country because people do not listen to the people when they're in safe seats. They just pander to their base, and that's killing our country. Let's all agree. Conservative, liberal, moderate,
Whatever
all of us,
I am.
whatever you guys are. Let's all agree this is wrong.
Agree. It's wrong.
And let's
do not
also
like the
agree
system.
that they won't
Lydia?
be changing it. And let's also agree it's time for tit for tat. I know you say you don't want tit for tat. I support tit for tat. If the
What's the problem? We're not going to resolve anything. If
Oh, no,
tit
it's
for
okay.
tat.
Yeah, but you guys want to go there, so let's go there. Let's tit for tat. And with Representative Pearson, the energy that he brought today, and I put it out on my social media, everybody was loving it. They're not going to change it. So crying about it's not going to make a difference. California's going to make up the difference. Virginia's going to make up the difference. Organizing voters, Democrats need to flip the House and need to expand the Supreme Court because that's what this is about.
But where does this end?
It
Where
ends at
does
the
this
For the
end?
People's Act,
That's it.
what the Democrats tried to pass and all voted for that banned partisan gerrymandering. It ends where we make dark money out of politics. It ends when you put Democrats who already voted for the John Lewis Voter Rights Act back in power, and you actually pass those things that make voter election day a holiday, that give us mail-in ballots, that give us safety in voting. All the things the Republicans are currently trying to rip away. Voter suppression started with gerrymandering, and then closing polling stations, and then limiting drop boxes, and then mail-in voting, and early voting, and same-day registration. Those are all taking away from certain communities that vote Democratic. We have to
I also
stop
think
doing that. And it ends when you put Democrats in charge and you actually pass the laws that they tried to pass before and all voted for and Republicans
One
voted
thing
against.
to
It ends with Democrats in charge. That's
Yes,
the goal.
and
Okay, that is the goal. That's why the
and
gerrymandering
passing
happened in
voter rights
Virginia.
protections and
But look, I
passing
mean, listen,
voter
But this is why the gerrymander keeps happening.
But Lydia, should
Republicans
should
are doing it in response
Lydia,
to
But
that.
you're
Lydia,
not listening to me.
should Republicans end put their weapons down and say, hey,
They actually
let's
did.
stop.
They actually did. In Indiana, they tried to do just
Wait a
that. They said,
second.
you know what?
That is not a good example. That is not a
In
good
Indiana,
example.
they said, we're not going to gerrymander.
Hold on, Lydia. That is not what happened, okay? Republicans did not say we're going to stop doing this. Some
They actually
Republicans
voted against it.
voted against it, and then they were targeted by the president this week, and 5 out of 7 of them voted out of their seats. And while that was happening down in Florida,
but this
a
is the
Republican
reality.
governor, Ron DeSantis, said that he was going to redistrict his state to eliminate Democratic
But that was a
representation.
moment.
There is no ceasefire happening on the part of Republicans.
That was
I don't want
a
a
ceasefire.
ceasefire.
And in
there was
response
not.
to
This
the
ceasefire is about as good as
ceasefire,
the
in
ceasefire in
response
Iran
to the
right now.
ceasefire in
The
Indiana,
president-
Virginia said, hold my beer, let me get rid of all of
That's
the wrong
Lydia,
votes.
you know, it wasn't a ceasefire. It was more like a mutiny. And President Trump hated the fact that they pushed back on him. And you know why he hated it so much? He hated it because
So that
it's
doesn't count
not,
Indiana? That just
it's-
doesn't, no one
I'm
cares.
just saying,
No one
that's
cares
not
that they
the same-
opted not to
That's not the
gerrymander?
same thing as Republicans saying, we're not going to gerrymander anymore, because at the same time that was happening, they were planning to gerrymander in Florida.
But you know what?
So
You know what? All of those Republicans who were upset were right. Because Indiana said, we're going to stop it. And then
And guess what? We don't want
Virginia decided to
and we don't
gerrymander.
want
So they were
and then
proven right.
Republicans spent $6 million voting them out of their seats.
And
That's what happened.
Democrats